Welcome, everybody. My name is Rudy McCormick. I serve as Executive Director for Arizona MESA. And you are in the right place as you're here or I'm hoping everybody's here in the right place as we jump into this session that's going to be entitled, What's Your Problem? Utilizing interviewing and empathy to arrive at a problem statement. So very grateful to all of you for being here. I want to pay a great deal of appreciation to my colleague, Kelly Garcia. Kelly is in Oregon MESA, and she prepared this presentation and had to step away. And I'm fortunate that she kind of had everything all set and ready to go and was able to kind of talk me through the presentation of this topic. So really grateful to Kelly Garcia from Oregon MESA. And this is session 2 of the Invention Education track, which you'll see here. Earlier in the day, Dr. Case DeGroot had an opportunity to kind of do the initial session in our Invention Education track, which had to do with kind of looking at the UN sustainability goals, those 17 UN sustainability goals, and really kind of going from a global context to looking at a local context and helping states to kind of, with an activity that could be facilitated with students, that could help students to see how these global issues definitely kind of are things that are happening all around us, and then even kind of furthering us to think about how we might then engage organizations in our local areas that are trying to make a difference and bring about greater equity there locally. So that was a great session. We'll continue with the interviewing and problem statement workshop that we're in currently. Later today, we'll also have a sketching and prototyping. These first 3 sessions were kind of meant to kind of provide a little bit of kind of curriculum, things that could be facilitated with students that we hope will be helpful to states that are engaging in invention education. We feel invention education is a great set of strategies that can be applied to so much within STEM. So we hope that you'll see some of that as well as you participate in these workshops. Day 2 tomorrow, we'll actually move into session 4 and session 5, which is going to be a lot more about implementation. In session 4, Danielle Ladd from Colorado will go ahead and talk about how Colorado, since they've come back to MESA, and as they're getting started with teachers, how they're doing that implementation of invention education. So I think they bring a great perspective of how to get started with it. And then we'll have a couple of awesome alumni panels that we'll get a chance to hear from, both from those that are kind of early in their career and those that might be more seasoned in their careers as well. So we'll have an opportunity to hear part of that. And then we'll end the day tomorrow with Dr. Tong, who's gonna be speaking about the invention education in Oregon and all that that they've been doing over really kind of nearly a decade of work with invention education. So I'm very grateful to Tong and her team for for all that they've shared with MESA USA. This is really kind of like a 3rd convening that's been focused on invention education. And so we're grateful to her team for all that they've shared in terms of their experience, their vision of invention education. So a little bit about what to expect in today's remaining sessions and also in the sessions tomorrow. So as I mentioned, Oregon's history with invention education, it began in 2016, and they had funding from the Lemelson Foundation. And so they have really kind of worked to develop a set of lesson plans, a set of curriculum, and they have a very formal pacing guide as well that they share with teachers, so that teachers have a sense of like, what is the time of year that they should be kind of targeting to have these lessons. And so that's something that has worked really well for Oregon. I think it's something that they encourage for other states that are kind of thinking about how they might implement invention education, is to look at these set of lessons and see how that how they can be spread out depending on each state's specific calendar year. You're going to hear some of those specific recommendations if you are able to attend Dr. Tong Zhang's session tomorrow, which is the final session in the convening, although then there's a closing session as well. I also just wanted to point out, I love this graphic that they've put together here that kind of has the acronym of inventor. You'll see there that today we're going to be focusing on or in this session here, we're going to be focused on the interviewing and empathizing, and then also the naming and defining the problem. The next session that we're going to be looking at is going to be more so focusing on the visioning and experimenting to make that to start to move towards making a prototype. So that's where we've decided to kind of focus our kind of scope within these limited number of sessions. And then there is curriculum that Dr. Zhang will go ahead and reintroduce everybody to, that is available, that can take you through those remaining steps all the way to Mesa Day, where students are having an opportunity to kind of tell their story and be able to share their work at the National Engineering Design Competition, which is just a couple of days away. So very exciting. So today, as I mentioned, we're going to be focused on interviewing and empathizing. And one of the things that I've learned from, again, from Oregon and the work that they've done in this area is just the importance of really kind of trying to give students some opportunities to engage in the space. Interviewing might sound like something that's a little bit easy kind of a thing. Oh, you just go in and talk to them. But we want to make sure that the students are as well prepared as possible, especially when we're asking them to kind of take on these topics of that are within equity. So kind of really having them kind of think through, how do we ask those questions most appropriately? How do we ensure that we're coming from this empathy space, and that we can really also set aside anything that we're bringing in from our own experience, from who we are as an individual, and instead focusing in on our client and those that we're trying to serve. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to have an opportunity to engage in some interviews. We're going to break up into some breakout rooms, and I'll see here if I have the ability to do breakout rooms here. I believe
you do, but just let me know what you need and I'll get it started if you need me to.
Awesome. So it's going to be breakout rooms for pairs, if that's possible. And random pairs would be great. And so, again, as I mentioned, one of the things that we're going to ask you to do is come into those spaces and to listen without judgment, and remembering your own identity may bring biases. The good thing about this is that you're going to have an opportunity to be interviewed as well. So we're going to give some time for folks to interview somebody else, and then we're going to turn that around and let that other person then interview you. So there is going to be an opportunity for you to kind of share your own perspective. But as you're interviewing, the focus will be on the client's perspective, which will be the other individual. So using the interview question starters, we're going to brainstorm a quick list of questions you would ask a partner. And we're going to kind of start off with this scope of experience cooking at home is going to be the topic that you're going to be asking, or that you're going to be interviewing on. And so you're trying to identify specific needs that the person may have as they're cooking within their home, as they're sharing about their experience cooking at home. And what you're trying to do is kind of capture as much of that experience and see what specific needs the individual might have that might then lead you to propose a design solution for this particular scenario. So just some kind of points here. What could you ask to make that topic more focused? So these are some things to kind of start to kind of think about. What could you ask to gain insight into their specific world? What works for them? And then, of course, what barriers are they facing as they're engaging in this space? So before we go ahead and break you out into our breakout rooms with our pairs, we want you to kind of take out a piece of paper, a pencil, and just jot down what are some of those questions that you'll want to ask that will help you to kind of get at, again, the individual person's experience, and then also what are some of their needs, again, in this context of their experience cooking at home. So we're gonna give you 5 minutes to go ahead and think through that and jot down some notes while we hear some Stranger Things type music in the background. Great. So hopefully that gave just some brief time to kind of generate some initial questions. I think that they also have some recommendations here about just good questioning strategies that sometimes it's important to kind of work with our students to understand while they've had an opportunity to kind of brainstorm as many questions as possible. Trying to kind of find that way to engage their client in a manner that's respectful of their time. So looking for kind of, are there some common questions? Are there some questions that are fairly common that they can kind of bring to a smaller number so that they are can respect the person's time, be as efficient in that flow of their interview with the client. It's oftentimes we are great about kind of asking all the different types of questions, but sometimes why might be one that's a little bit kind of that is a little bit more uncomfortable. It can kind of maybe give a questioning type of perspective, but that why is oftentimes important to kind of really understand the needs of the client. And so I think just letting students know that this is kind of a space where some of those why questions can come. Avoiding usually, because again, that may be kind of, you may be kind of introducing what you think usually is a response from others, or usually are other people's needs. So trying to avoid that. Asking them for specifics, if they can kind of bring that to bring you into their space. In this case, kind of, they can bring you into their kitchen and kind of have you really kind of know what it is that they're working, the space that they're working within, what their experiences are, trying to make that as real as possible, encouraging stories. I'm looking for inconsistencies. It's not that oftentimes as folks are sharing of their experiences, or maybe inconsistencies, but sometimes it's in those inconsistencies that we can find some details about what is appreciated about a specific scenario, or what might not be appreciated. And so can get to a little bit better understanding of the needs that the individual might have. Paying attention to nonverbals is also important. Letting silence hang, being able to kind of put a question out there, allowing for time to pass, and allowing for the person to have some time to kind of think about how they would like to respond to that. Oftentimes, I know as educators, that's often a strategy that is encouraged, because too often if we ask a question and we move on to another question, sometimes it just doesn't give the individual the opportunity to kind of respond and give us their insight. Being careful not to suggest answers, right? Keeping the questions neutral, and avoiding yes, no, one word answers, or more so avoiding asking questions that folks can respond to with a yes or no or one word answers. This is something that I personally kind of sometimes struggle with. I feel like as a father coming off of Father's Day, I can tell you that oftentimes I find that my son or daughter, as I ask them about their experiences, oftentimes they respond with good or fine. And, I always tell them, like, I feel like I just watched a movie about your experience, but that's really not on them. It's more so on me that I'm asking for kind of asking them these questions that aren't really getting to hear a little bit more about their responses. Any other good questioning strategies that folks would like to share at this moment that they've utilized, or they feel like is important to kind of reinforce with your students?
Rudy, can I speak?
Yes.
Hi, this is Rebecca Ibarra from Utah. I just think that when we ask students questions, or anybody questions for that matter, we want to allow them to speak as much as possible. So I think it's important to remember to ask them, when they answer a question, to start out with explain this to me, or describe what that might look like, or, tell me what types, kind of things. So to giving them the chance to speak, so that some of those holes have been filled in, I guess, that are often left hanging when you have a yes or no answer. So I just give them a chance to speak, explain, tell, describe, share with me, things like that.
That's awesome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for kind of sharing those. I think that,
Mhm.
again, those types of kind of stems that can kind of help us, help our students to kind of see. And I think that one of the things is that, like, here we're emphasizing the opportunity for the students to start off with other students, because again, it is a skill set. It's a skill set that we can kind of continue to evolve in and get better with as well. Any other recommendations on questioning strategies?
If I could speak up again, Rudy, I don't want to monopolize, but I think that one thing that I have a difficult time in asking questions about is the wait time. Wait time for me is really hard, because I usually will jump back in and start talking again before anybody's really had a chance to gather their thoughts to respond. So I think wait time is another very important question skill.
Yeah, I don't know what people have heard in terms of like how long you should typically wait. I think I've heard folks say something like even 13 seconds, which if you kind of start to count on 13 seconds, that can feel a bit uncomfortable. But I think that it's this notion of the more you can push yourself to kind of give that time, allow people, I think, to process the question too, that, you're more likely to kind of be able to get some of those responses. Very good. If folks have other questioning strategies that they'd like to share, we'll encourage you to kind of feel free to contribute any of those in the chat as well, which I'll be kind of looking at if any comments are coming up there as well. So, again, it's not just about the interviewing, but it's also that opportunity to kind of introduce our students to this important kind of and critical skill set of empathizing. I think that's one of the great things as we're asking our students to kind of enter into these spaces of inequity, of just being able to listen and hear and to try as best as possible to understand, to try to walk in someone else's shoes, even though that's we usually, as much as we'll try to empathize, can't really fully understand somebody else's situation. But that we're trying to be as respectful and to go into a space where we're trying to gain as much as possible about what the person's experience is. So it's also important for us to know kind of where our identity is when we're interviewing as well, and to kind of set that aside. So today we're going to kind of focus on kind of listening, hearing your partner's stories. Again, the great thing about this is that there's going to be an opportunity for you to share your own stories as well. But we're going to focus first on hearing, building empathy for that experience of your partner, and then letting go of our own perspectives and trying to kind of get at more so what are the specific needs that this other individual may have. And that through that listening and through really kind of hearing the person, that we're not really kind of solving somebody else's problem, but instead kind of collaborating through the design process and coming to a solution where somebody's needs have really been kind of listened to. So sort of strategy today. So we're gonna break us out here to do the interviews. So what we want you to know about this is that, again, this context or the questions that we're going to be asking about have to do with your partner's experience cooking at home. And so what you're going to be doing is utilizing some of those questions that you had an opportunity to brainstorm earlier. Hopefully, as we kind of talk through some of those recommendations, you might have made some changes or kind of outlined which are the questions that you might want to ask first. how you might get to further information from the person by using what Rebecca shared with us about kind of these terms that can kind of help us, right? Explain, describe, tell me about, allowing for sufficient time. And we'll have about 5 minutes to listen to them. So it's not kind of the most time that we'll ever have, but it'll give us 5 minutes to be able to listen on both sides. 5 minutes for you to listen to your client, and then you'll switch roles, and that person will then listen to you as their client. So it's listening without judgment, remembering our identity, setting that aside, especially as we're taking notes. It should be taking notes on that person's experience, right? Not on our own. And then accepting your partner's feelings as their truth. And then we're going to switch roles after 5 minutes. We'll put that information into the chat so that you'll see about how much time is coming up at each time. So if I'm not mistaken, I believe that Anita has set us up into the room.
Yes, they are ready to go.
Okay, awesome. Then you are going to be invited in, and then I'll start a 5-minute timer on my side, and I'll send out a message when there's 1 minute left per each 5-minute session, and then some messaging around switching so that then you can tell your experience. But for right now, one person will listen to the other person's experience. Go ahead and join your rooms, and we'll see you here in a little while. So great. So thank you everybody for kind of participating in the breakout rooms and having an opportunity to kind of, again, learn a little bit more about your specific client's needs as it has to do with, again, this experience cooking at home. So what we want to do is kind of, I guess I'll first off ask, like, what were some of the experiences that folks had? Was it easy? Was it tough? Did you feel like it was easy to fill the 5 minutes? Was it hard to fill the 5 minutes? What were people's experiences? I'll open it up to the floor.
For myself, this is Kurt from Spokane, Washington. I found it pretty easy, but I'm really gabby, so that's not too hard for me to do. But and my partner, Alicia, had really good questions. So when she was asking me questions, that went really well as well. But yeah, it really went pretty well in all.
Great. And I think that's one of the nice things about actually having our students kind of practice this skill, right, with one another, is that there's an opportunity for us to kind of learn from this questions that, you know, there was a set of questions that I might ask, but my partner might kind of ask similar questions in slightly different ways. And I might appreciate the way that one of those questions sounded, and then I can kind of incorporate that into my own interview strategy as well. So great. Thank you very much for sharing, Kurt. Anybody else want to kind of share about the interview experience?
Hey, I'll share. Mike from New Mexico. I really enjoyed talking with the person I interviewed. It was easy to get along. I felt I didn't discover any problems in that short time that I needed to address, but I feel that given a few more minutes, we would come up with something. And it was fun listening to her interview me, the way she would ask the question and they'd come across. So it was a learning experience on both sides.
Thank you very much for that, Mike. Yeah, good to hear there. Other folks?
I'll share real quick, Rudy. This
Thank
is
you.
Manny from Arizona. So I know, like, for me, when I'm listening and I'm trying to understand and see where I want to go to next, I have a hard time not suggesting like an answer, like, you know, and really trying to rephrase it is like, you know, what I'm hearing is this, is that correct? I know that I have to remind myself to do that, not say, are you saying this, you know, but really saying is what I'm hearing, right? So that phrasing to make sure that what I'm interpreting is correct, so that, again, I'm not kind of coloring it with my experience and my bias.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that one, it's a great kind of opportunity to show the individual that you're listening, right? That you're kind of summarizing, taking what they said to you, putting it back in front of them, and just making sure that that you're clear in your understanding, and that allows the person to either kind of provide feedback on that, or to say that, yeah, that's correct. So I think it serves it for both purposes. So we're going to kind of move ahead from kind of the interview that we had a chance to do, and kind of just remember that, you know, I'm not sure if this is just an Oregon MESA or if it's something that's kind of recommended, is that, of course, you know, you look over the notes that you took for the individual that you were interviewing. We're going to have you kind of do that as I'm kind of talking here over these next few sessions, to kind of ask yourself, you know, was there a problem that was identified that you're going to be able to kind of potentially start to work towards a solution for? So hopefully the time allowed. I know that it was kind of a fairly limited time, so it may not have gotten there, but we're going to go ahead and push you to kind of look for that within the notes that you have, looking for themes, main ideas, patterns, thinking about what you want to know more about. What questions do you still want to ask? There is an opportunity, and I think that Oregon recommends this, is to have a dig deeper session. So if it's possible to have a second session with the client where you're able to ask kind of further questions based on additional understanding that's needed. Again, you may get to the point where you feel like, I fully understand what the information that I gathered. I don't really have any further questions, so that might not be necessary. But that opportunity to kind of go back and just ensure that you got all the information that you need, whether that might be through a second interview or a short follow-up email that might kind of ask them to share some additional thoughts. So that opportunity to potentially kind of dig deeper there. So then, you know, in reviewing your notes, looking specifically at what are some of the user needs that were identified that they may have shared. What insights did you find out about the specific person? Why are those needs maybe specifically important to this individual? Are there some interesting things that might that were shared that might allow you to kind of develop a solution for? And again, looking for patterns, because again, if something was stated several times or there's a pattern of something, then that might give you an opportunity to kind of move in a certain direction as you're moving, as you know, we'll kind of move folks into either a sketching or prototyping phase eventually. But yeah, looking for those patterns. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna actually ask you to kind of create a problem statement based on the individual that you were working with. And the problem statement is gonna help to then guide your design solution for your user, right? If this is your problem statement and you go to kind of design some solutions that would address that, it becomes a great place for us to come back to say like, okay, have I designed something that I thought would be really, really cool, that was more kind of something that I'm interested in, but that doesn't meet this specific person's needs? Then I might have to rethink that, right? This helps us to kind of keep honest with ourselves. And so here, you're going to notice that it's going to ask you to kind of provide a user, then, you know, have needs a way to, and what is that user's need there? Needs a way to, and what is that user's specific need? Should be tailored to your client. Strong words and verbs, is insightful, and generates a lot of possibilities. And then finally, because in their world, what is the insight that you gained about why that need is important to this specific individual? So you've got the individual, the specific need, and why is that so important to that person as we're trying to kind of empathize with this individual. Great. So what I'm going to do is in the chat, I am going to give you a form here that I'm hoping folks are going to be able to go into. And Manny, you might kind of let me know if the form is a form, or is it it's a document that where you're going to be able to submit your problem statement? And what we're going to be doing is in the next session, folks are going to be looking at these problem statements, and they may not choose just one. They may kind of look at a variety of them as we move folks towards sketching and prototyping some different solutions to this context of kind of experience, individual people's experience cooking at home. Of course, if we were doing this and we had a group of students, we might be able to have them stay with their specific problem statement and then work to address that through starting with like a sketch, moving towards a prototype that might help to serve the individual. So again, we want everybody, if you don't mind, to take a moment and kind of create that problem statement, go into this Google form, and be able to submit that form. I'm going to give everybody I'm going to give a minute and a half to do that, because I just want to make sure that you've got some time to do that. So I'm going to pause myself here and give us all about a minute and a half. Thanks. Give us another half minute. All right. Definitely, if you need a little bit more time, perfectly fine. You can go ahead and submit those problem statements as you're able to kind of conclude your creation of your specific problem statement there. We do thank you for sharing those, because again, it's going to help us in terms of in our next session. But so again, what do we have an opportunity to do in this session? We had an opportunity to kind of practice a little bit of those interviewing skills for a brief moment, I know. And then we had an opportunity to come back and try to place what we learned into these problem statements that will then kind of inform how we move forward and start to move towards the creation of some type of design solution that could be sketched out and then eventually potentially prototyped to meet the needs of this particular individual. Some modifications that are mentioned here for working with this type of workshop with students, potentially giving more time, right? We saw that 50 minutes can go by pretty quickly. The 5 minutes we heard from some folks could allow some time, but more time could be, of course, helpful. Most interviews that students will do will probably be longer than 5 minutes. So we want to kind of give them an opportunity to kind of experience that, see what that time could kind of look like, allow them maybe to kind of run out of questions and then kind of figure out how to use the remainder of that time to still kind of inform the needs, empathizing with the needs of the individual. Brainstorming questions together as a chapter or group, especially I think as we're talking about jumping into topics where equity is being addressed. I think that being able to do some of that work as a group or to get feedback from the larger group as a, maybe a group of 4 is going to go in and interview potential clients at an organization, then giving that group of 4 an opportunity to present some of the questions that they come up with as a chapter together to get some insight from their colleagues about things that they should be careful of, right? And in terms of how they ask their questions, things like that, I think are really important. What are other modifications that folks on the call might recommend that should be kind of taken into account as we're working with students and kind of getting ready to send them in to interview clients? What might you recommend?
Is this open for voice or am I supposed to be writing this down?
Open for voice.
Okay, so I think that what's important too in modifications for students would be to give them a little bit of background on nonverbal communication, because I think a lot of times, especially with the younger generation, they're not as in tune to a nonverbal communication gesture or eye roll or things like that. But I think that they need to know a little bit about some nonverbal communication so that they don't, stand there with the person across from them with their arms folded in front of them, kind of closing them down, and they would have no idea that's exactly what's happening. They're being shut down.
Yeah. So not just about what they might see, but also what they might put off as well in terms of their own nonverbal skills, right? I remember kind of doing paraprofessional counseling, and they talk about like there was an acronym for SOLAR, and it was about kind of eye contact, kind of leaning in, attention, other things that I'm not recalling in this moment, but that opportunity to really show that you're listening and that you're hearing, because that's important to keep the conversation going, or to give the person that trust to be able to share some of the needs that they're experiencing. Great recommendation. So nonverbals are very important. Any other recommendations for modifications or things that we think we should be thinking about as we're presenting, interviewing, and naming problems with our students?
Rudy, I have something else to say too, but I want to allow others to speak if they choose to.
Okay, we'll give a second here.
Mhm.
Yeah, Rudy, maybe for ELL kids, I think if you will be assigning them to go interview, I think it's necessary for us to give them some hook or some format for them to follow when they go interview some people, especially for the kids that belong to the ELL or,
Yeah, so that's always a great reminder. Thank you so much. I believe that was Melba who said that, but just that with our ELL students, it's oftentimes important for us to kind of think about what else can be put in place that will help the student. And then also, do we need to communicate also with the clients in advance to just let them know that the student's going to be coming in and we'll be conducting their interview, and just providing potentially a little bit more context for those that are being interviewed as well. So thank you very much for that, Melba. Rebecca, what else will you guys share?
I was going to say, even sometimes culturally, it's difficult. Sometimes even our students, our teachers are not aware of some of the cultures, but will demand that a student look at them when they're talking to them. And maybe the student in their culture has been taught not to look directly at the face of the person speaking. It's a more respectful thing to look down. So it's sometimes you've got to be a little bit aware of the cultural things. So I'm hoping that if teachers and others, by living the example, are sharing some of that information, that they'll pick up on that and learn that, because it's hard to know exactly who doesn't do what and who does do other things. So I just think we need to be culturally aware of differences when we interview or when we're listening to people being interviewed.
Thank you, Rebecca. Cultural awareness is very kind of important. I think there's, I'm going to end on this because we're going to move into our next session here. But just that there are, in some of the conversations I feel that we've had with others have kind of recommended that, like, this opportunity to serve this community maybe shouldn't be the only interaction with this community. It just brought into mind to me, like, should we have some form of maybe service component in MESA that would actually allow us to kind of work with an organization, work with the population, and kind of bring about greater need through service, but also to kind of learn some of that and kind of be exposed directly to the cultures that we would be working with, that would bring about possible greater understanding, possibly greater empathy. But some things to think about. I don't know that that's an easy thing to kind of put out there for an entire state to kind of take on, but something to kind of think about. Thank you very much to everybody for kind of participating and engaging in the session. If you'd like to see kind of where we're kind of taking some of this material today, we're going to be actually taking your problem statements, and then my colleague Nick is going to go ahead and facilitate a session that's going to kind of focus on both sketching and prototyping to take us to that next step in the invention education process. So come right back to this session right now, or you may be going to another session, but thank you very much.